I can trace the start of everything back to the evening my sister, Erin, showed up at my door with two garbage bags full of clothes and a look that told me she'd already decided I owed her something. I remember feeling that tight pull in my chest, the kind you get right before a storm breaks, but I still let her in, because that's what I'd always done. I was the steady one, the one who made things work even when no one else tried. At the time, my life was painfully normal. I worked early mornings at a small landscaping company, came home tired, reheated leftovers, watched whatever was on TV, and went to bed early. Quiet, predictable, fine. Erin, on the other hand, treated life like a series of escape rooms where she could scream until someone eventually opened the door for her. She hopped between apartments, jobs, and boyfriends, always with the same comeback line: "It's not my fault." When she told me she'd just stay a week, I believed her. She put her bags in the corner of the spare room, thanked me half-heartedly, and immediately asked if I had anything better than the cheap cereal I kept for myself. That should have been the first real warning. But I'd grown up smoothing things over for her, apologizing to teachers, covering for missed chores, and taking the blame for fights she started. Old habits die stubborn. By day 3, subtle tension had already slipped into the house. My groceries disappeared faster than I could restock them. Cups and plates gathered in her room. She borrowed gas money and promised she'd Venmo later, though I'd never once seen her use that app. She slept through the mornings and stayed up blasting shows in the living room, claiming she couldn't relax in the guest room because it felt weird. Every explanation slid out of her like melted butter, smooth, easy, and impossible to argue with. Still, I kept trying to be patient. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself family helped family. But the truth was simpler. I didn't want to be the bad guy. Not again. Growing up, voicing even mild frustration meant I was too sensitive or starting drama, and Erin was always the one everyone rallied to protect. Somewhere along the way, I'd learned that being quiet got me through faster. But that week stretched into 2. 2 became 3. She hadn't looked for work. She hadn't mentioned leaving. And whenever I hinted at her plans, she'd laugh and say, "God, relax, I'm not hurting anyone." Yet things kept happening. My laundry detergent went missing. My favorite jacket vanished for 3 days before reappearing in her trunk. She used my truck, without asking, to run quick errands, returning it with the gas light on. When I confronted her, she stared at me like I'd personally offended the concept of generosity. And then came the night she invited people over, while I was already asleep for an early shift. I woke up past midnight to voices, music, and the unmistakable smell of something burning in the kitchen. My heart pounded as I stepped into the hallway. There she was, feet on my coffee table, drink in hand, telling her friends she basically lived here now. Something cracked quietly inside me. Not rage, not even anger. Just a deep, eerie clarity, like hearing a door click shut behind you. She didn't notice me in the hallway. She didn't care enough to look up. And for the first time in my life, I felt the beginning edge of a thought I'd never allowed myself before. I don't have to tolerate this. Not anymore. The conflict was no longer creeping. It was fully awake. And so was I. The morning after her little gathering, I found my kitchen looking like a crime scene. Empty bottles, smeared counters, a pan burned beyond saving. Erin breezed in around noon, sunglasses on, wearing one of my shirts like it had always belonged to her. She didn't say good morning. She just sighed and asked if I could keep it down because her head was pounding. Something inside me shifted again. Quiet, subtle, but solid. I told her we needed to talk. She rolled her eyes before I even opened my mouth. When I explained that the party couldn't happen again, that she needed to clean up after herself, and that her stay needed an actual end date, she stared at me with a slow, sarcastic smile. "There it is," she said. "The lecture. You love this, don't you? Acting like you're better than me because you have your sad little routines." The words didn't sting, not the way she meant them to. They landed like something I'd already heard 100 times but finally recognized as nonsense. Still, she kept going, picking at every insecurity I'd spent years quietly patching. She said I was controlling. She said I was paranoid. She said I made her feel unwelcome on purpose. And then, with a shrug that told me she truly believed it, she said, "Honestly, I'm doing you a favor by being here. You'd be lonely without me." That was her worldview in one sentence. Her presence was a gift, and any burden she created was someone else's fault for not appreciating it. Over the next week, things spiraled fast. She borrowed my debit card just to pick up groceries, then overdrew my account buying makeup and takeout. She dismissed my anger with a bored, "Relax, I said I'd pay you back." She took packages off my porch and opened them, because she thought they were hers. She even let one of her friends shower in my bathroom while I was at work, leaving wet towels everywhere like a calling card. But the breaking point wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I came home early and found her sorting through the glove compartment of my truck. She didn't jump or look guilty. She barely reacted at all. She just hummed to herself while thumbing through my registration papers. When she noticed me watching, she shrugged. "Chill. I needed a pen." I don't know how to describe the feeling that washed over me then. It wasn't anger or panic. It was more like stepping out of a fog and seeing the shape of everything clearly for the first time. Erin didn't respect boundaries because, in her mind, there were none. Not between my belongings and hers. Not between my home and her convenience. Not between my peace and her impulses. Nothing was going to change on its own. That night I sat in the quiet of my living room, staring at the blank TV screen, and I made the decision I'd avoided my entire life. I was done being her safety net. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to threaten. I wasn't even going to warn her. But I was finished tolerating the chaos she carried like a shadow. And the next steps, careful, quiet, deliberate, started forming in my mind. Once I made up my mind, everything in the house felt different. I stopped reacting to Erin's behavior. I stopped reminding her about the dishes or the noise or the bills she'd promised to cover. I moved through my routines like she wasn't even there, which confused her at first. She kept poking for arguments the way someone taps a loose tooth, out of habit, not purpose. But I didn't bite. I let her talk herself in circles while I quietly set the groundwork. The first step was gathering proof, not for court or anything official, but for clarity, mine and anyone else's who might get pulled into the fallout. I took pictures of the damage from her party, the overdraft charges, the open packages, the burned pan, and even the texts where she claimed she'd totally pay me back. I didn't plan to use them aggressively. I just wanted the truth documented, neatly and without emotion. Then I visited our mother. Growing up, Mom had always defaulted to Erin's side. "She's sensitive," she'd say. "She needs more support." I half expected the same response now, but when I calmly explained what had been happening, not dramatizing, not complaining, just stating facts, Mom's face slowly fell. She asked to see the photos. She asked how long it had been going on. And for the first time in years, I watched her realize just how much she'd overlooked. "She told me she was helping you," Mom said quietly. I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded and told her my plan. Erin needed to move out, and I needed Mom's support in saying so. Not manipulative support, just backup so Erin couldn't twist the story into me being heartless. Mom agreed instantly. It surprised both of us. Back home, I took the next steps. I boxed up the items Erin had scattered around the house, her makeup on my sink, her socks under the couch, her half-worn shoes by the door, and placed everything neatly in the spare room. I changed the Wi-Fi password, removed my keys from the hook in the hallway, and installed a small doorbell camera I'd been meaning to set up anyway. I didn't confront her. I didn't hint. I just prepared. The final piece came naturally. Erin had been bragging all week about a weekend trip she was taking with some new guy. When she left that Friday afternoon, hauling 3 bags and telling me not to mess with her stuff, I simply nodded. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I opened every window, washed every dish, and took back the quiet that had been swallowed by her noise. Then I walked into the spare room, set her boxed items near the door, and placed a polite note on top. "Your stay here is over. Please arrange pickup with Mom. Do not enter the house without me present." I locked the front door, then the side door, then the truck, and I waited. Sunday evening, my phone exploded with messages from Erin, angry, shocked, spinning the story in a dozen directions. I didn't reply. I sent only one text to her and Mom in a group chat. "Erin's belongings are ready. She no longer lives here. Mom can confirm why." Nothing more. No yelling, no guilt trips, no explanations she could twist, just facts. For the first time in my life, I held the line and didn't move. Erin showed up the next day with Mom in tow, marching up the driveway like she expected the door to swing open on its own. When it didn't, she rattled the handle, then pounded hard enough to shake the frame. I stepped outside calmly, locking the door behind me. Erin launched straight into accusations. How I'd blindsided her, how I'd betrayed family, how I'd ruined her weekend. Her voice kept rising, hoping I'd crack first, but I didn't. I told her everything plainly, one sentence at a time. Her behavior, the damage, the months of disrespect, the overdraft fees, the boundaries she'd ignored like they were optional. With each point, she tried to interrupt, but I didn't give her room. When she tried to spin it into her being the victim, I simply held up my phone and said I had proof of every incident. That shut her up faster than anything else. Mom stepped forward then, not to defend her, but to back me. She said she'd seen the photos. She said she believed every word. And she said Erin needed to take responsibility, not hide behind the old family pattern where everyone swept things under the rug for her sake. I watched Erin's face change in real time. Shock first, then disbelief, then the slow, sputtering anger of someone realizing the script they always relied on suddenly didn't work anymore. "You're choosing him over me?" she snapped at Mom. "No," Mom said. "I'm choosing the truth." We loaded her boxes into the car. She didn't thank me. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look at me until the very end, when she muttered, "You'll regret this." But the threat felt hollow, like a door slamming after you've already left the room. When the car pulled away, the silence that settled over the house didn't feel empty. It felt earned. In the weeks that followed, small things changed. I found my belongings exactly where I left them. My bank account stayed steady. I slept through the night without worrying about what I'd find in the morning. Mom called more often, not to mediate, but to check in, like she finally understood how much I'd been carrying. Erin bounced between a couple of friends' places before eventually renting a room on the other side of town. Word got back to me that she'd been telling people I kicked her out for no reason, but no one seemed to believe it anymore. The old charm didn't hit the way it used to, now that she'd run out of people willing to clean up her aftermath. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It didn't ruin her life or teach her some grand lesson she'd carry forever. It was simpler than that. I took away the one thing she always assumed she'd have: unlimited access to me. And that, more than any confrontation or explosion of anger, forced her to face herself, maybe for the first time. As for me, I learned something I probably should have understood years ago. Peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. Sometimes it comes from drawing a boundary and refusing to apologize for it. And once you feel that kind of peace, you don't let it go again.